Oh, hey there. Now, the other day I told you to tell your story, and then I realized that a lot of you guys can't read or write or tell a story very well. So I'm going to give you some hints, okay? First of all, every story, and I know this seems painfully obvious, but it needs to be said, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That is your Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 of any given story. In your Act 1, let me just set this up for you, okay? You've set the stage. This is the time period, this is the place, these are the main characters involved, and whatever the problem is, okay? There's always a problem or a question. And let me just go ahead and set the stage for you on this one. Your problem can be man against man, man against himself, man against nature, man against God. Those are, for the most part, it's going to fall into one of those categories, okay? And you probably want to start off with some kind of a hook, some kind of a question that you don't necessarily answer right away. You go, hey, this is my dilemma. How did I get to the solution? And then you lead them down the road, okay? So you've got the problem, that's your Act 1. Now your Act 2 is going to be where the characters develop, where you go, this is the problem, and I think I can solve it like this. And you're like, there's a plot twist. And so then you're like, that doesn't solve the problem. Here's what happens in every good story. There's what is called a character arc, okay? So whoever the protagonist is and the antagonist, now this doesn't necessarily mean good guy and bad guy, okay? A lot of times there's stories that are told from the point of view of the bad guy, and you're like, I want him to get away with it. Like, he's my hero. He's the protagonist. He's the guy that I care about in this story. Whoever your protagonist is and your antagonist, they are equal rivals to some degree. And one gets a hit in, and he levels up. And the other one gets a hit in, and he levels up. And they go back and forth, hit for hit, problem for problem, whatever it may be, until finally it escalates, and you're like, I don't think either one of them can win. I don't think there's a good solution to this problem until the character arc happens. Now, in a character arc, typically our hero, the protagonist, whoever that may be, has some kind of a revelation in their life, okay? So what happens is they are typically humbled by life. They realize, I cannot win. I am defeated. They are humbled. And in the good ones, they decide, I'm going to sacrifice myself for these other people. At which point, they stop focusing on themselves and they start focusing on other people. When that happens, they have what's called a character arc, and they're going one for one, and all of a sudden they rise far above their opponent, and now they can annihilate them, and that is usually your Act 3. Now, that doesn't mean hurt them necessarily, but it solves the problem, okay? And so these are essentials of a good story. Now, there's other essentials, but that is super basic stuff, okay? I also want to point out, every good story, and you can go back and you can look at all kinds of stories, every story that you're like, this resonates with me, this story touches my heart, this story makes me glad that there's a hero, this story makes me glad that somebody sacrificed, it makes me respect this person, this inspires me, or whatever it may be. Every good story lends their story from the one huge story that is history, okay? What I mean is the story of humanity. We were lost, we were fallen. First there was something good, okay? First we were in Eden, we had communion with God and all that, and then we lost that. And then devastation. And then the crumbling, decaying sadness that has come from thousands of years of sin and all the consequences that have come with that, and we're struggling with that, and like, how do we overcome this problem? And we all try everything but God, which is a dumb move on our part, but that's the way that we are. And then finally, God reaches down at our patheticness and goes, I don't want any of you guys to go to hell. And he provides a way, and he goes, look, I believe in you so much that I'm going to give you my son. And then he's mocked and he's beaten and he's killed in our place. And then he rises again. He rises from the dead so that one day we can too. And there is redemption. And that whole story is a love story. That is the story of God pursuing us and loving us throughout all of history so that he can bring us home. He can bring us home to safety and to paradise and into communion with him again. And it is a love story. And that's why when we see a love story, it trigger something inside of us. Like we go, I don't know why I'm, and you're like, because it touches your heart, because this is the story of you. This is the story of you, and it matters, right? So if you can get these elements in there, a lot of times people go, this story is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that story is the story of Job. Like I've got, my second book is called Desperation. That is the story of Job. If you read Desperation or, whatever, and then you read the story of Job next to each other, you're like, this is exactly the same thing, only it's in a different setting. So my story is in modern day America. A guy owns many companies. All of a sudden, in one day, he loses everything. He loses his reputation. He loses his health. He loses his all of his money, his wife, his kids, you name it, all gone. And then he loses his sanity and his reality. And then how he struggles through it and then finally comes out on top on the other end, and then God blesses him, is a beautiful story. But it's 100% borrowed from the Bible. I mean, it is a Bible story told in today's setting, so that you go, oh, I like this. And then if somebody goes, that's what this is, and you're like, huh, really? The Narnia Chronicles, what in the world do you think that is? Aslan is Jesus, okay? That's what it is. You're in a world that is cursed. It is always winter and it's never Christmas. That we're in a world where all these things, we're like a step away from paradise, and yet we never get there, right? And the devil rules, just like the wicked, whatever, ice witch, whatever she is, rules. And then Aslan finally comes. There's prophecies about him, and he comes, and he sacrifices himself for the one that betrayed him, for Edwin. And they cackle, and they mock him, and they shave him, and they strap him down, and they kill him. And then what happens? He rises from the dead, stronger than ever, and conquers and wins that kingdom back. And that, once again, is being borrowed from the Bible, from the one true story that is going on all throughout history. So I realize this video is getting long, but I hope that helps you in your storytelling, because it really does matter. Love you guys.